The doctrine of the Immaculate Conception does not refer to the conception of Jesus. It refers to the conception of Mary. Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion, and I continue to see people use the phrase Immaculate Conception in reference to Mary's parthenogenetic conception of Jesus. And that's not what it refers to. The doctrine of the Immaculate Conception developed to account for how Mary, the mother of Jesus, could have been conceived without the imputation of original sin. And this doctrine begins to develop in the 3rd and 4th centuries CE with early Christian theologians who are commenting on the exceptional favor and grace that is shown to Mary in passages in the New Testament. And the idea that Mary lived a life free from sin begins to circulate around this time period. And as happens with so many religious dogmas, the scope of the dogma begins to expand, and you begin to have debate about where it's coming from. You begin to have debate about the implications of it. And so early Christians for a long time were debating how it could be that Mary could be without sin, particularly without original sin, which all humans are supposed to inherit from their parents at their conception. And so some folks argued that, when she was born and her soul entered her body, that was the point at which original sin was washed away. Or maybe that at the Annunciation, God washed away her original sin. Now, around the 11th century CE, within the Western Christian Church, you begin to see this argument that she was exempt from the imputation of original sin at her conception. And how exactly this worked was also debated. But by around the 13th or 14th centuries, the predominant view is that Mary's parents were temporarily exempt from the imputation of original sin when they came together in their sexual union in order to conceive Mary. And by the 15th century, the Pope would acknowledge the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, but it would still not be a formal or official doctrine of Catholicism. That would not happen until the middle of the 1800s, when there was a Pope who proclaimed the Immaculate Conception as a formal doctrine of the Catholic Church. And by the way, this was also the same proclamation that established that human personhood began at conception and that the soul entered the body at conception. This had been debated for some time as well, but ever since Augustine in the late 4th century CE, the majority of Christians believed that ensoulment occurred, or the soul entered the body, at the quickening. This was the consensus view from the 4th century CE down to the mid-1800s. And then with the formalization of the doctrine of the Immaculate Conception, it was determined that Mary would have had to have been a person with personhood at the moment of her conception. Therefore, all persons were persons with personhood at the moment of their conception. And so all of that happens right in the middle of the 19th century. But again, and to conclude, when people say the Immaculate Conception, that is not a reference to Jesus's parthenogenetic conception by Mary. It is a reference to the conception of Mary by her parents through a sexual union that was temporarily exempt from the imputation of original sin. And the fit for this video has been a black and white version of Jim Lee's X-Men number 11.